Hey guys, welcome to Quest Givers. I'm DM Scotty with
DMG,
and we're going to talk about how to run your RPG, okay? So it's going to be a really fun episode, and let's get to it. Gareth, you want to say some words?
Yeah, have a great Black Friday.
And a great thanks. Hey, wait a minute. Have a great Thanksgiving. And then a great Black Friday.
And then a great Black Friday.
Wait. No, that's after. So enjoy your turkey.
Gobble, gobble, gobble.
Try not to get mangled on Black Friday. All right, enough of that. We're back to the episode here.
If you're looking for adventure, excitement, thrills, and a dice-rolling good time, sit back and enjoy the next few minutes with Quest Givers DM Scotty and DMG. They're taking you on an epic journey through the role-playing experience every Friday. Learn the ways of the Game Master, the Dungeon Master, and delve into the minds of the players. Grab the modules each month to support the channel and play the campaign with your gaming group. You're sure to get hooked on adventure.
Hey guys, I hope you pick up the modules to join us with these episodes. Also, make sure you subscribe to the mailing list and get extra content. And look out for our Kickstarter September 1st, which is going to be awesome. So you guys check that out.
You can also pick up these nifty t-shirts, and there's also some hoodies available as well. Links in the description below. So as you said, Scotty, this is a course about how to run an RPG session. So, last video we talked about how to prepare the session. We talked about how to get the characters together and all that kind of things in the video before. So really, this is when you're actually playing the session. So what are some of your tips? You've obviously been doing this a long time. What are your tips for actually how to run a session?
Well, first, like we've talked about preparing, you want to prepare, right? You want to prepare for the session by reading the module, of course. And you want to, have your player characters all ready, ready to go. And then you want to, have all the stuff you need, like your dice and that kind of thing, and your snacks, and, a quiet place. You want a quiet place to play, right? You want a nice place you can play.
I feel one of the key things is that, we talked about preparedness, but one of the key things when you're actually running the game is understand when you've got the module and you've got all these things, the game that you're playing, the key rules that you're going to need to know for this specific session. So if there's a specific kind of effect that a monster does, or there's a specific kind of spell that an NPC has, make sure that you have that referenced or written down, or you've marked a page ready to go, because you don't want to be in the middle of a session and then stop to page through and find it. This is obviously part of preparedness, which we didn't really focus on last time, but when you're actually running the game, this is one way to speed up the game, is to actually have these things quickly accessible. And you should ask your players, as part of their preparedness, to prepare their own spells and their own weapon abilities and that kind of thing to streamline the actual game.
Yeah, those are some great points. You want to, and if you're like me who like to use miniatures with my game, you want to have either terrain or maps or that kind of thing ready to, go to lay out. So if you're going to do like a village or something, you want to have stuff that you could use for the village, and, maybe your little miniatures and that kind of thing. So yeah, think about, how you want to run it. You don't need miniatures. You can just do theater of the mind. You don't need all that stuff. But if you do want to have that stuff, have it ready. I'm DM Scotty. I do the DM's Craft, and I have a bunch of terrain, and I often do that with my game. And what I do is I have tables. I call them staging tables that I set up behind me, and I'll set up some stuff on there that is easy for me to grab, to put on the game table. So that's important if you want to run a game with like miniatures and terrain, because you want the less time you take grabbing that stuff, the better. You can just get it on the table and set up the little scenarios, or the encounters or whatever, if you want to do it that way. So yeah, you want to have everything easily accessible, and like Gareth said, stats are part of that.
And I find, and I've written this into my 7D system rules, which is the game that I've created, but I also played D&D this way. I've played DCC this way. I tend to be very strict with turn order, and you'll find this in games like ICRPG by our mutual friend Hankren from Runehammer Games. Great channel. You'll find that he also has this rigid turn order, and I personally feel that, especially with people that are playing online, each person should have one turn, and that turn is, okay, you get an action to do. So I want my character to do this. Bang. So your character does it. Next person. I want my character to say this. They say that. Next person, etc. And you go through, and you each person in order, and keep and maintain the order throughout. What this does is, one, it actually speeds up the game. Scotty's played in my games where I've done this, and you've played with Hankren as well, haven't you? Yeah, so he's experienced this. It does make the game faster, but another key aspect that I found when we played with Lee from Master the Game, who's a good friend of ours and is a big supporter of our other channels as well. When he played in my game with his wife, one of the things that she said was she got an opportunity to play her character, which normally she does not get an opportunity to play, because a lot of the times people talk over one another. And if there's a person at the table who is not forceful, who doesn't, have that presence where they want to interject, all the time, this gives them an opportunity to actually have a turn and to actually do something. The problem that these people always experience is that they get marginalized, and that other characters go through and do all these weird and wonderful things, and they're kind of left doing the healing. They've got a lot to add to the game. Trust me, the introverts that are sitting at your table are people who are going to add a huge amount of value to your game. And I think this one little tweak to have a very strict turn order and give each person a turn is very important. But the turn, try to keep them at the same length. So don't give one person 10 minutes and another person 30 seconds. Try to keep giving the people opportunities to do things in their turns.
That is a great point with how to run the game, because you want everybody to feel that they're an important part of the group and that they're getting their moment to shine. And that's part of your job as the GM, is to make sure everybody has their shining moments, right? So yeah, that's definitely something you want to do at your table.
It also means, there are some people who have different play styles. So someone may be more theatrical in the way that they do things. Another person may prefer to just roll the dice. When they've got their own turn, they're in their own space, so they're not being interrupted by someone else. So a person who just likes to roll is not being interrupted by someone who likes to role play, who, is doing a theatrical thing. Once they're given one sort of sentence to say, they can do it theatrically, they can still do what they want, but that's not going to chew away at the time of other players at the table. And to that time element, keep your eye on the time, because you want to cram as much into that 2 to 4 hour period as you can, because the more that the players invest in what you're doing and invest in this module, if you're playing this module, the more you are going to get out of it as the DM, and the more modules we're going to sell.
And pacing is right there, Gareth. You want to have a good pacing, in your game. When it starts to lag, you want to kind of get it going, and you want to give the players time to shine, but you also want to keep it going. You don't want it to die. You don't want it to die in the water, so to speak. So yeah, keep a good pacing in your game. Always pay attention to the signs that your players are giving you, and if you're getting board signs, you need to move it along somehow. Kick them in the butt a little bit and get it going.
Players getting bored tends to be a symptom of them not getting a turn, or there are too many players. So if you're playing with like 8 to 10 players, it could be half an hour between turns if you're going around the table. The guy or the lady may only go like 4 times in a session. And be very wary of that. You don't want to actually be, having a situation where the person's not getting a turn every 3 or 4 minutes. I think that's a good sort of time. If every 2 to 4 minutes the player gets to roll a dice or say something or add to the story, the pace is going to pick up and keep going. And you as the DM, don't sit there with a soliloquy for half an hour about what's going on. You only get 2 minutes as well. Consider yourself a player. Don't mess it up.
That's a good thing in our module too. There's not a big blocks of text that you read to the players. That's the quickest way to lose a group of players, right? When you're just reading them text, because it sounds like you're reading text. They can read a book at home. They don't need to sit there and read them text, right? So yeah, that's one thing our module's not doing. It's just feeding you big blocks of description. It's giving you the description, but it's not giving you huge blocks of text to read to the players.
And if there is anything that's a little bit extended, it's extended because there's humor or something in it it's there for a reason. So if something extends like maybe a quarter of a page, it's because there's something in there that's important, or we've decided is humorous and you'd probably want to have that in there. And there's plenty of that. We love to just drip that throughout everything. Every little scene has something in it that's juicy.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, that's like so cool. Yeah, that's one great thing about the module. There's so many fun little things in it to keep it interesting, not just, boring information or whatever. It really adds a lot of flavor and keeps it interesting. And you want to keep your players kind of transfixed and interested and always wanting to know more, what's going on, giving them little pieces of information and it piques their interest, and they're like, what's the next thing? What else is going on here? And so you want to keep that kind of bread trail of information so they stay interested.
Yeah, don't just vomit it all out all at once. Oh, this is what's going on. I mean, one of the key things, obviously, as a role-playing game with different systems, there are different rules. Some use dice, some use cards, some use Jenga towers. I mean, there's all manner of different things, but the mechanic, understanding the mechanic and how this changes the time dynamic and all that kind of thing as part of how you run the session. One thing I like to do is there's one space where the dice are rolled. So, if you've got 4 or 5 people around the table and each person's rolling their own dice, you don't want to be over the table trying to see what the dice roll was, right? You have a centralized thing. If obviously with Scotty, he plays with a lot of terrain. I play with a lot of terrain when it's in person. Online, I don't. But there may be more videos on my other channel about that, but you can check that out. When you're actually rolling the dice, if everyone can see the result, that is better than I didn't see that, or it rolled off the table, or the person picks it up and rolls it again. You don't know what the first one is. There's a lot of people out there, for some reason, they feel like it adds to the game to re-roll the dice, to cheat. The most interesting thing that happens in the game is when your character fails, and you should explain this to characters or players who like to cheat, who like to re-roll the dice quickly. Oh, quickly roll that. It was a cocked dice. Explain to them, look, sometimes it's better for the character to fail because more interesting stuff actually happens. The story gets more interesting. And I think that's one thing you should also be looking out for is, where do you roll? Where is the mechanics of the game? Where are the cards sitting and the dice tower and the whatever? Of course, in your session 0, which, as I said, I just start with initiative and that's how we go. But in a typical session 0, this is where you'll kind of outline, this is how we're going to play this game and this is what the expectations are.
That's a great point. It's good to have expectations for your game, right? Particularly if you're with a group you don't really know. The kind of etiquette you expect at the table. Some people don't allow devices and this kind of thing. Some people roll in the open. All that kind of stuff. And you don't want to surprise people with those kind of demands. You want them to know your expectations of the game, and their expectations of the game, so you can all work in unison and not suddenly oh, what? You don't want those what moments, you want to avoid those as much as possible.
Prepare for some sage advice. If you're a new DM and you're playing with other people who are DMs, okay, or GMs or flame tenders or whatever it may be in the game that you're playing, don't be afraid of people coming at you with, no, that's not what the rule says. You are the arbiter of this thing. You decide what the rules are and how it's going to work. If you have someone in your group who's rules lawyery, now I like rules lawyers. I'm partially a rules lawyer myself, but you also need to have an agreement with them. If there's something that's up with the rules, get them to tell you at the end of the session, look, you didn't play that spell right, or you didn't do the attack right. So in future games, we correct that problem. But if they're constantly badgering you through the game, it's going to mess up your rhythm and you're going to be feeling a little bit on your back foot. So you're not actually going to be putting your best foot forward and actually enjoying the game. So as a new DM, and even some experienced DMs as well, if you've got a rules lawyer and you part of the reason why DMs start to be agitated by rules lawyers is because they're constantly interjecting information. So it's really about sitting down with them and say, listen, I'm happy for you to correct me on the rules. That's fine. Just do it at the end of the session. Write it down. These are the rules you got wrong. You can then go, fine, in the next session, I'll know not to make these mistakes. And then all done. They've had their say, you've corrected the problem, and everyone is happy. But that constant interjection of no, the rule's wrong, here it is on page 7, that is irritating.
And you were talking about DMs and GMs, right? And that's interesting because I play in a lot of games, and sometimes I'm like, oh, that's not how I would have ruled, or that's not how the rule should go. But I may say to the DM, oh, can I do this, or does this happen this way? And if they say no, then I go with it. I don't argue with them and nothing shuts down a game quicker than you starting to argue with the DM, and nobody's having fun. When you're arguing, you're not having fun. So even if I don't agree with the ruling or whatever, I roll with it with my character, and I just move on. What I'm saying? Because I've noticed, DMs are just going to make different rulings, and that's how it's going to be when you play, especially if you're a GM or a DM.
Yeah, I mean, it happens at any level. People are going, oh, I wouldn't have done it that way. It's just par for the course, really. Yeah, I would harp on more about that point, but we're gonna. That's not what this video is really about. This video is about how to run the session, and yeah, all these key elements. I always talk about if you've got an artist in the group, a person who likes to doodle, they tend to get distracted and doodle things. And what I like to get them to do is to get them to draw the map, or to draw their impersonation or impression of a monster or the scene itself. Just a quick drawing of the scene itself. If you've got someone who always brings their guitar and likes to, strum away in the background, get them to do the tavern music. Get them to add, a few strumming riffs to the battle music. They're the bard. These sort of things actually they are getting fun. The rest of the players are getting fun. The fun element is the most important element in the game. So you need to find out what each individual player, how they're going to enjoy the game, and you be able to push those buttons while you're playing. That, I think, besides being prepared, that is one thing. As you get to know your group and you learn what these people like, you can then add these elements to the game that's not necessarily in the actual narrative of the game, but it's in the actual way that you play.
That's a great point, because those are the times they're going to remember. They're not going to remember when they rolled that crit or whatever. They're going to remember when, remember when he bought his guitar out and he was playing the music for the tavern. That's the stuff they're going to remember, right? That's the great stuff. And the other thing is, another thing I want to point out is, the group gets its energy from you. If you're kind of a sit there and DM, these 6 goblins attack you, okay, roll for initiative, the group is going to key off of that. If you're like, these goblins jump out and they whip out their rusty weapons and they're rushing at you, and you're getting, you're bringing this energy to it, that's really going to transfer over to the player group. It's infectious. It really is. It's like laughter. When you're all laughing and having fun, you can't help but have fun. When other people are having fun.
There's DMs who like to do accents, and there's DMs who like to do that. I like to do different languages. Like even in the module, there's like the mountain clansman guy. This sort of language is in there. It's actually written. You can read it out to the players, and there's translation, so you know what they're saying, and the players can roll to find out what he's saying. But you don't actually need to do accents. It's like, I can't do accents. I'll just read the thing. What you can do is you can change various aspects of the way that you're presenting the material. So, if it's exciting, you should really read it as quickly as possible and put some emphasis into it. If it's something where it's a bit creepy, maybe you should speak a little bit slowly. And you should really put a point on certain horrible words. These aren't accents. It's just the way that you're actually presenting the material. Accents and things, there are not a lot of people. I can't do accents very well. There's a few examples on one of my channels that's like, nah, that's not good enough. My German is terrible. But, these things, just by changing the pitch of your voice, the speed at which you talk, these elements actually make a big difference to the energy. As Scotty said, the energy and making things fun and entertaining is what's going to drive it all home.
Yeah, and like you're talking about, we have a fun ogre, in our module, and he speaks some ogre and stuff like this, and you just have fun with it. That with those kind of characters like that, that's the time to have fun. Like Gareth says, I don't really do accents either. I'm not good at that, but you can do other things. You can change the speed of how you speak. You can maybe if it's a woman, I'll soften it up a bit, or goblin, I'll make it deep, squeaky or whatever. So don't feel like, I got to make all these great accents or whatever. You can change the way you speak, just marginally, and it will make a big difference.
So with that, thank you for joining us, and of course, sign up to the email newsletter to get all the extra content that comes along with the module Death and Taxes. See you in the next video.